بس الجواص الإلزامي درجة مناسبة.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. نبدأ.
توكل على الله، بسم الله، على بركة الله، توكل يا سامي.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الله يمسيكم بالخير. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Today, the 7th meeting of the Virtual Architectural Atelier platform. Our guest tonight is the architect Marek Tryzybwicz. Yes?
Very good.
Okay. Marek, Group Managing Partner, Design Director of MTDI Group. He is a co-founder and design principal of MTDI Group and International Architectural Group of Companies, formerly Bose International Planning and Architecture, with office in Warsaw, Poland, New Delhi, Dubai. Before founding Bose International in 2007, Mark lived and worked in the USA and Germany. Marek is designing for over 30 years. He created architectural concepts of the realized award-winning large manufactural, retail, office, residential, and entertainment-based developments in Europe and USA, HOK, the Middle East, Fotaim, India, Turkey, and China. Mark is registered architect in Germany and Poland. And before we start, we hope for the audience close the speaker and camera until the end of the presentation. Then we will get the questions and answer from Mr. Marek. And your question, please to insert it in the question and answer. Our guest speaker, Mr. Marek Tryzybwicz, you are most welcome for tonight as guest and speaker.
Thank you very much, sir. This is really a very big honor to be here. I think it's a fantastic opportunity to talk and to have a conversation, to really exchange some views, some ideas. We live in such an unusual time. No, not yet. It's really quite important to get know each other better, because a lot of challenges what we are going to face in the near future are our joint challenges. There's no place in the earth right now which would be completely immune from the problems of today. And they have, like a chain reaction implications and impact on our lives, on economy, on our profession, or the allied professions. And so it's very good to talk, very good to exchange ideas, very good to have some sense of collegiality when we open up with our thoughts. So very quickly, I would like to introduce myself. And again, yes. I'm honored to be invited to this distinguished panel. I'm a Polish architect. I was born and raised in Poland, but also in United States. I feel that all what I was doing is pretty much follows my passion, my interest, and my. I don't really see this as a work. I see this rather as a way of life. And along that, it might be a good idea to really put some interesting things in perspective. I lived in US for almost 17, 18 years. I was design director and vice president for HOK in Dallas. They also have oil rigs, the same as we have in Saudi Arabia. And I worked for some top oil companies for their headquarters, offices, corporate things, and so on. And this was a very important time, you know, because while I was based in the US, a lot of work has been done outside North America, and it started to add layers of understanding of different cultures, different people, different realities, different context environments. And was it in Asia, or was it in Europe, or was it in Russia, or was it in the Middle East, or was it in America, or in Americas, or in my native, where I was born, native Poland? This was a time when things were changing quite dramatically. And I would say that this experience, being involved both professionally, but also as a human being, as a person, in so many different cultural context situations, became my biggest treasure. And I cherish that and value that since then as my most important value, which I will never lose. This will always stay with me. So in the beginning of 2000s, I left my mother company, because that's how it's called, HOK, and started to work with a friend of mine, with a very good colleague, also ex-principal of HOK. Or Bose, we established a company, Bose International Planning and Architecture, and started to work in India at that time quite intensively, doing mixed-use projects, retail projects, offices. That was the first wave of intensive work, new development work in Indian subcontinent, in India in particular. So that was the beginning. And then after that, you know, the things started to balance out. New, very interesting opportunities unfolded in Europe, in Asia, in other places, in Turkey, in China. And one of the most interesting aspects was my involvement with Magital Fotaim, with MAF, in 2005, 2007, around these years. I was there as a consulting design director for MAF shopping centers. And my company was also providing design services for the whole portfolio of almost 26 projects throughout the region. So I have to say that this was an incredible introduction, an incredible in-depth introduction into the Middle Eastern commercial design realities, but also with people, with personalities, with culture, with architecture, art, and the rich background of the region. And this is again a very precious aspect of my formative years, I would say, as a design person.
Mark, after your movement from United States to Europe, then you get a lot of a project in commercial, retails, and residential. You mean that you established your own company at that time? And
that's correct.
Then how did you create your networking in Middle East, for instance, and you get a job here? I mean, opportunity to design and to participate from your thought.
Well, this really started, if you be talking about the MAF, about the Middle East, MAF was the vehicle. And it started, you know, almost like a fairy tale. You know, one day I just got a call from executive of MAF who said, look, you know, we are in the process of searching for a design studio which can support the portfolio of our design work. Are you interested to talk? If I didn't pick up that phone, I probably wouldn't be talking about that at all. But I was fortunate and lucky to pick it up. So I said, of course, I would be very interested. So that's how it started. They visited us. in Warsaw. Then I went to Dubai a couple of times. We started to really form the whole concept of the involvement. And that was the beginning. And then at that time, I met really wonderful people, very professional personalities, both from the Western Hemisphere, but also from the Middle East. And the collegial aspect of our work and the nature of, if you work on design on 26 projects throughout the region, and I've also learned that the region is not homogeneous, that there are a lot of interesting differences, subtle, some of them are more pronounced, and being guided from a cultural standpoint by my friends from MAF, it really helped me quite a lot. And I wish I knew the language. That would be much easier for me.
Good. What do you want to show us tonight then?
I'm sorry?
What do you want to show us tonight?
Well, yes, I think now what we can talk, and please feel free to engage in a very informal discussion, is like what prompted me to offer the subject of urban places created for the near tomorrow is the fact that we are here remote. Some of them are still living with the consequences of lockdowns. Some of us are in the various parts of the world. Some of us are involved in a commercial architecture. Like me, I was doing a lot of designs of shopping centers, of a commercial projects, mixed use. And today's the pandemic created, caused a lot of questions. How we are going to move from here to the future. What are the means, and how this? Obviously, we won't be able to cover the whole subject to its full depth. There are a lot of layers: economy, the conditions of the retailers, conditions of the developers, investors, overall economical situation. But I have one interesting thought, and this also comes with another subject. Slowly but surely, we are going to be affected by the climate change. This is also, I don't want to get in a lot of discussions today on it. We hear, we read. The more we are involved in this, the more questions we could ask. But nevertheless, that's a second subject which will affect us. And so, in a very simple terms, I want to show you some of my projects ongoing.
Just hit me when you say that, and even before global warming and everything. And I say, when you design in places like Montreal versus places in Saudi, you have totally different climatic situation. One, they want to hide from really cold, and one, they want to hide from heat. But both you want to treat them and give them a very happy, good place for people. That is the challenging, and I would like to hear also from you on that.
Yes, you touched a very, very right subject. We are really struggling to redefine today, irrespectively of the climate context, is it very hot or very cold or whatever, what the quality of life is going to mean if we have such a profound challenge, such an incredible challenge as the implications of the global warming. And on top of that, we are also in a very uncertain situation today with the economy, with the implications of the pandemic. Pandemic is not over yet. And there's another layer of our thinking, which is the technology rise. There are three factors in my mind which are really affecting and redefining the phrase quality of human life. We are sitting here and we are as close as we could be instead of being in the same room. This virtual world, which we are getting immersed more and more and more, will have also an impact on the real environments, what we were accustomed to. So, if you take all these factors, that's really the background for you know, not one, but for many discussions, many thoughts, many creative ideas. So I can tell you upfront that, in my view, the time for large shopping centers, for the large monofunctional components, is going to diminish. And we saw that already in the United States, we saw that in other countries. There might be still some places where by just pure default, they may be needed because we don't have them or there's not enough saturation. But the fact is that this is also a great time to reinvent the concept and to look, instead of the monoculture, look at the true mixed use formats, but reinvented with the bringing the quality of human life as the critical factor driving that. So maybe I can switch to the PowerPoint, and we can see that in the background.
Do that. Let me warn you. I mean, this is a hot stuff now in Saudi. We have a good number of urban designers with us, and would love to see what you have tonight here to offer us.
I'm delighted. And again, I'm not neither the only one who is wondering about this, nor I may not have the only and the best ideas. Those are just basically the thoughts which are coming out from my experience, from what we are doing on a daily basis. And we don't subscribe to the thought that the whole world is going to move to the virtual reality. We don't. I don't think that that's going to happen. As long as we are humans, as long as we have our senses, both we can see, we can be seen, we can talk, we can engage in a social format. We are a social species, and yeah, you may say that a lot of these things may happen in the virtual world, but not everything. So I would put a thought that we should try to compete for people's attention, for people's presence, for people's footfalls, for people's presence in the real places. But we can't do it through only through this conventional means that, well, let's do 150,000 square meters of commercial space, everybody will come. Yes, some people will come, some tourists will come, but in terms of creating a real interest, we have to look also for more diversified, almost like a satellite places, maybe not in such a huge scale, but nevertheless interesting. What that interesting things could be. And in fact, this is maybe nothing very new, but maybe we have to reinvent that for today's needs, which is the place to meet people, the place to eat, the place to be entertained, the place to see, the place to sense the smell, the sense to be within a green area, this sense to senses of being surrounded by a nice, attractive environment, whatever that means. This may be different because of the climate situation here, there, or wherever. But we have to
whatever scale as well, Mark.
Sorry?
And whatever scale as well, from a small neighborhood, a place, shared place, to a larger development or a downtown place?
Yes, absolutely. Why? Because, look, today, if you want to have something really fascinating, you take a car, or you take a plane, or you take a train, or you take a long journey and you travel there. Who says that we cannot have some of these attractions locally? Why not we try to do things locally? Why don't we try to do places in a scale of residential districts where we could avoid situations that we have only bedrooms practically, and then people work and live and travel to completely other places in town on completely, sometimes dozens of kilometers, to work there or to eat, to be entertained. Why not to look for local aspects of it, localization, I would say. And within that, maybe we can create these satellite formats where you can work, you can be entertained, you can stay for longer just for a reason to meet some people, for meet friends, for being surrounded by a social format. You know what? This is nothing original. If you look in the history of places like souk, like bazaar, like a market square, like you know, any forms of organization of people, they were not just the trading places, they were places to attract people and exchange views, and in some places in the world there's still that function. We don't go there for purely a shopping experience. We go there for a social experience of various natures. So I think we have to reinvent some.
Lively, active, and happy, and cater all your daily needs.
Yeah, yes, and now imagine that with the today's situation. We have a lot of young people. They have to have a place to live. They have to need a place to work. But what work? They don't need a huge, big offices. Sometimes they may need just the co-working spaces. Sometimes they need spaces where they can share with their friends who think alike and come out together through interactive process into a startup formats, into a new companies, new ventures, very heavily involved in virtual work, right, with the IT work. But it doesn't mean that they are not real people. They still have a need to socialize. They still have a need to have a nice environment to be in with others, but also sometimes with themselves only. Or they need the place to eat. They need the place to read. They need the place to see a movie. There's many things which should be treated in aggregate.
Marek, do you think in this case the city will reconfigure for the future? Reconfigure the spaces? Will it go smarter in a space management, making space? How the spaces would look like after 10 years, for instance, as you read urban?
Well, I can't. Yes, this is a very good question what you've asked, and I can only say I can't really say how this will look like, but I believe that we should focus not only on the technological advances of flying taxis, on the magnetic trains, on the ever faster faster internet connections and the transfers of data. But we should also look at the physical format of what is that environment going to be. And are we ready to resign to an IT situation that the IT drives the virtual realities, or generally the IT world drives our lives completely? How about if this is complementary to a new reinvented city where we don't have to travel hundreds of miles to get the work? We may just walk, and we may walk in a sheltered environment where
I have for you another question as you move on your slide. So we're talking now 25 minutes, but consider that we have the first space that is a home, second space is work, third space is a public space. Do you think we will have the fourth generation of space that is a virtual places or no? During your presentation, I want to hear from you this.
Yes, and I think this interwoven mesh of the virtual world with the real world is going to live with us at least for quite a while. And for that, I believe we can look at the places which meet both aspects. You know what? I don't know what about you, but after hours of spending in front of the computer screens, and I can see for the younger people, they just don't want to be there anymore. They want to be between their friends, their reals, you know, real colleagues. They want to get some fresh air, they want to eat, they want to go to the movie, to the concert. So these senses are going to stay with us, and we have to cater to this. We have to really do something to make these things happen. You know, there's a great...
And we have to create different pockets all around the city, and from residential to work to commercial to different places, catered to all the people. So,
exactly, and maybe we could do it not in a functionalistic way, that here's the residential district, here's the office district, and here's entertainment, but try to look all these things in a symbiotic format. And I think that synergy is very interesting, and that very multifaceted, multi-faced. And for example, a lot of cities have the industrial past. Yes. You know, like old factories.
That's my question to you: how we could look into the city evolves, and some areas prosper while some areas get somehow, if I may say, get sick or can go slow. How we can revive those and take the advantage of bring it back to people, make it places for people of different needs, of different determination.
Yeah, like for example, in Europe, we have quite a lot of examples of defunct factories, you know, rundown spaces, which everybody thought, well, you know, this is no use for anything. And then suddenly we rediscovered that these are the most attractive things because they have a spirit, they have a certain flair of the past. They need to get a new soul inside, yes, and that new soul is the new need, new use. So if you combine this for living places, for workplaces, for redefined, reconfigured retail, for the events, for the places to be, and for being entertained, that's fantastic places. And if you added a new substance to complement that old ones, because sometimes the old ones have also peculiarities of the sizes, of the footprints, and so on, you can get a fantastic dialogue of the old and new. And today we have to really look at the aspects of how to protect that spaces against either a heat or a cold, or the snow, or water, or you name it. These climate aspects will be, they will expose us to such a various ways of the way how the weather would behave, that it's not only the heat, the proverbial heat, what everybody is worried about. There may be places where instead of a heat, there will be a completely erratic, you know, thunderstorms, water, tropical rains, and so on, the places where nobody heard about. So these challenges also has to be taken under consideration, which may also make us travel less. We would like to have more things close by. We would like to have more things almost going back to our historical pasts, from various cultural centers in the world, where we had the market squares, where we had the plazas, where we had people walking, or at the worst using a very simple means of communication. Who says that we have to spend 3/4 of our life in the cars?
We discussed, I think, a point, Marek, where we said this is a typical, probably European lively cities, where the American cities now are suffering and going through the new urbanism to create such places, isn't it?
Well, you know, there was and still is a trend to bring life back to the downtowns. Obviously, this is very complex. It involves the real estate aspects, economy, you know, property issues, and so on. But once we see a value in it, which means somebody's interested to buy the place, rent the space, live in this, use it, then the market comes. And I believe that the younger generations, at least that's my observation, is more and more inclined to live in a attractive for them urban environments. And you know, like for previous generations, to have a car, to drive a car was, wow, I would love to have this Lamborghini, Ferrari, whatever, and so on. For today's people, well, you know, sometimes they got more thrill of, oh, look how great electrical bicycle I've got, right? Yeah. And why? Because I don't want to create a carbon trail. I just want to use it and achieve what I want to achieve, but work more in sync. People are getting more sensitive to this, so that's a little bit of a hope. But nevertheless, if we say that the outcome of all this climate issue is unpredictable, and I'm not in a position to say that we will win these battles or we will lose it, but it's very dangerous time for the decades to come. We have to start to think how to find ourselves in the environments which will be very new to us. And for that, I believe that the concentration of food production, of waste management, energy production, cutting out the travel distances, creating the satellite activities which would be attractive enough to create, you know, a catalyst for the real urban lives on a local basis is a challenge which we should take, and we should take it now. And we should not worry about mixing the functions, both how we live, how we work, how we use the space, how we are entertained. There obviously must be separations of certain assets so they don't collide functionally, but nobody should assume anymore that we should spread functionally these different assets over the large distances. There's no need. That actually adds to the problem. It adds the travel cost, it adds the complexity of infrastructure, cost of infrastructure. Let's be more local. And within local, let's create communities. Let's create a sense of belongings to my small small area which I identify with.
Mark, if you're talking about, mixed-use development, how you decide in this case the density, the good and the proper density and the hectare? Because if you compacted the district or the area, you need certain density, so it lets all of the function generated. Any thought in this aspect?
Well, first of all, none of this is done in a vacuum. And in none of this, the designer, the architect, is the only person who has to be convinced to a given solution. It has to be a team approach where the owners, developers, where the research, market studies, and the understanding of the local markets, catchments, and so on gives us the chance to do something like that. But I also believe in novatory aspects in our work. If you do things which are attractive, which adds value, which are doing new things which others didn't do, that increase the value. That sometimes is worth to even not to be fully compliant with the maximum expected sizes, maximum expected square meters, if we can get the value spread differently. And because in the very end, you have to sell the property or rent the property or make it active so people will come.
Yeah,
so
that's why I'm asking, there is a return over investment, because we are talking about placemaking, urban place, design. As designer, like this project you are showing now, from where you start? Do the developer give you, for instance, a complete real estate studies and program that you develop based on? So your team will analyze, for example, the activities, okay, based on a certain studies normally. How are you acting in this? I mean, as an architect or design office?
Very much like you said, the research and the brief and the background for the given property or given piece of properties is a must. We have to understand the nature of the location, the nature of the the context, of the reach, of the transportations, and so on. But very quickly, we should ask ourselves, okay, what would be our competitive edge against the others?
Okay.
You know? And it's also architects' responsibility to either propose this type of a solutions, or suggest, or absorb if somebody else brings that. And we, as the designers, as architects, have certain abilities and there's a certain field where we could and we should contribute to the competitiveness of the aspects. And if we do it in a way that it improves people's quality of life, like, for example, look at this image. Imagine that you live here, but it's not just a residential development with some residual collateral office components. It's also like a resort. You live in a place which has the base, which is retail, which is entertainment, which is commercial components, without colliding with your collision with your living conditions. And who says that they cannot, that I cannot live, I cannot have my apartment or flat or penthouse, because it could be also stratified in terms of the quality of these things, in an environment which also resembles a resort. And I can walk there by foot. I don't have to travel 100 kilometers or miles to get there. And I can be exposed to the same type of sensory aspects, like water, like greenery, like attractive shopping experience.
This is very beautiful, and I just want to add a layer of a challenge which always comes to my mind. To make a good placemaking for people, it is to be catered to the local people for that specific geographical solution area or design problem. How we could make sure, let's say, just as a challenge of similar cases that you've gone through. I have somebody from Poland will design a placemaking happy place for people in Dammam, let's say. Okay,
Yes.
How we ensure such thing, where it requires to understand the social cultures, the people needs, even the language, even the communication of places and need. How do we do that as designers?
Well, we as designers have to come with a big sense of uncertainty. We should never come with the ready-to-go solution. You should never transplant, almost like a parachute, the solutions from a completely different places. Even looking at this image, you know, the amount of the glass in the apartments. It's not only the issue of temperature, climate conditions, but it's also a cultural issue. How much of that connection with the outside world is acceptable for the families, for people who live there? If you have the commercial area, how do you secure that this is environment when all the segments, what you are targeting to, are feeling comfortable here? What type of shops, what type of venues, what type of offers, gastronomy, food offers you can offer? Well, you know, you will not offer an English pub with all the things which come here in the middle of Dammam.
It's all about stage setting, urban stage setting, if I may say.
Well, I think the stage settings, creating almost a theater-like ambience, like we have different theaters in Toronto, we have different theaters in London, and different formats of performance places in China or in the Middle East.
I meant for urban designing an urban space is like a stage setting of understanding all the you know, different scenarios and scenes of the place to kind of create the right, you know, moves and design the right acts, isn't it?
You know, you touched a very interesting point, that talking about the stage setting. Imagine that you have a theater wherever in the world, and you invite a director for a play, and he's bringing his play. it's not so simple that he can bring any play and any stage setting and direct it in any way. You have to really cater to the local context. You may have, you could be the most talented, experienced, whatever, but you are designing in a real context. This is not only the performance, it's a real life. I would say it's a performance of life. So you have to work in a team, you have to work with multicultural influences of others, not only within the engineering architectural profession, but also with the people who understand the society, who understand the context, cultural context, who understand the tradition, who understand the desires of local people, who, there's so many layers. It's a liberal art thing, not a technical art. It's a humanistic art, not a technical art only. And you have to put this first before you apply the solution. It's like a doctor. You need a good diagnosis before you apply the medicine, right? You just don't throw the medicine just because it's very good somewhere. Even if it might be considered the best for coronavirus, you really have to make sufficient trials for that. So anyway, it's a complex process. And we as the designers, as architects, can contribute to it, but we should not consider ourselves the only players nor the panacea for all this. We have to work in the teams and listen carefully and get sometimes things between the lines, which otherwise you omit as a designer.
In this case, Mark, how do you measure the success of a place during the design stage? For example, you are working an idea, you're developing a place that collecting people to certain place in the city, for example, or in the strip mall. What is the time you're taking the decision? This is the right place we design. When you say it, in which stage of the design?
Well, the moment when the assignment is on, when you get involved, you immediately have to get immersed in it. Get immersed in it in a real sense. You have to start to read. You have to start to absorb, listen, talk, really build your own background for understanding. And don't shy to ask. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to come with, I know nothing about this. Please let me help me with understanding so I can do better job.
Okay.
And obviously there are some things which we can bring to the table arbitrarily, maybe some technology.
So you're asking urbanists, for instance, or you go and ask people in this case, because this is an urban, so you need opinion of people sometimes.
Well, in Europe, we have a very strong, very strong process of asking for local communities to get involved, to understand their, and this is an art on its own. There are specialized entities which do the research, which gets people speak, they get their opinions on. It obviously has many faces. It potentially could be incredible value, but it also could be, if it's not managed properly, it could be a process which could derail the process. The process.
What's the process? Is it learned process or experience process? Mark, this is very important because we are reading about placemaking a lot, but let me know from your experience, what's the process of placemaking? Is it is there any principle and design guideline and code for it, or no? It is an experience from the urbanist or designer.
Well, it became, a specialized arena in Canada and United States, with the urban planners developing a very logical sets of criteria for creating places for people. But very honestly, I dare to have my small own view how to deal with this. I believe that we have to aim at the process which allows us for things to happen. And to happen means to, for me, in order to happen is to work very hard on a non-public sector, to buy into the concepts, into the ideas, into the formats which could improve people's quality of life, rather than look at from the other sense that, okay, we have a great concept here, please build it for us. You know, because the reality is that the most cases, either we stay within the reality of theory or of virtual designs or non-built designs, or we reach the goals. And to reach the goals, sometimes you have to work as hard on the public as well as on the private sector to find the consensus. And here,
great,
we
Mark.
have 10 minutes, Mark.
Yeah, I wanted to say this. Although I have a couple of issues I wanted to hear from you on the landscapers and flexibility in the planning on and what could it result on making a better placemaking. But since we have 10 minutes to go, and I know how important the visual graphics in communicating the ideas to the client, to the decision makers, and knowing you as a very distinguished freehand graphic design architect who use the freehand to communicate. We would like our audience to share with us some of your work, and I know you have also the vacuum tablet, which another platform of digital transfer from your freehand on paper to freehand on platform using the technology. So can you?
I would be delighted to share this. And, you know, starting with maybe, and again, this is a sort of a maybe more specific characteristic of the things what I'm doing. Simply because I like it, you know, I don't see this as a remedy for everything what designers should do, but I believe that the issue of communication is very important, and sometimes the one image is worth of 1,000 words. Sometimes a quick image, very quick note breaks up the barriers between the people who are discussing things. So I quite consciously call this placemaking commercially considered. And that's also a partial answer to your question, how and with whom to talk. I believe that the evolution of the commercial word into the placemaking projects commercially considered is one of the potential positive aspects. And you know, so there's some drawings which I'm doing, and some of them are done very early, some of them are done in between, but I
just want to share with our audience, those sketches that you see are all drawn by your hand, isn't it?
Yes, they're all my sketches. Most of them are done with the computer background.
Wow.
So I can refine, I can add some further components. Okay. And in fact, they represent not only my work and my ideas, but also my teams. You know, sometimes I'm like this is maybe not the best word to use, but like a director of an orchestra, where I have a lot of talents around me, a lot of very sophisticated brains, architects, designers, and I sort of put all these things together. Okay.
Stage setting team.
But I never lost this pleasure of drawings, you know, and for me, this is a big part of the communication, which gives also certain real advantages. I can communicate these ideas very early. I can break certain ambiguity very early, but they are never so defined that they would say, well, that's it. You know, they are left with a lot of to your imagination, to your own thoughts. When you do communication just in the form of a CGIs or just a computer image, they immediately they are very suggestive, but also very limiting. So this ambiguity at the concept phases is very good to retain. And it also, when you draw it, it also opens up your own thoughts, your own ideas, your own potential development. So this is like a diary of a design at the early stage. And the fact that I do it in this technique, because you know it's fast, but it's also synthetic. It's not too much of a. There's some images which I really like this one, like that one, like this, where I can see the sense of urban space being redefined, where we say urban and a building could somehow be merged. Instead of saying this is urban planning, this is a building. No. We could
an image like this is just kind of triggered in my mind the old industrial buildings, and so pre-engineered, where you can convert them into very lively urban places for young generation, we spaces and others.
Absolutely, that's exactly the case. And bringing the old to the new glory, bringing the old forms in a combination, in a balance, in a sync with the new ones, adding live activities, mixing time with the forms. And that's something, you know, which, you know, that's what realities we still want. Look, we want to be entertained. We want to be participants and observers. We want to be passive and active observers on the various senses. That's what we could and we should be putting focus on. The similar things is also for the semi-enclosed spaces, you know, where you can create places where various ways of activities happens.
Mark, how long it take from you to do such like this sketch, for example?
Well, again, as I said, this is an expression of my work, but also my colleagues, my friends who are working with me. And usually this is the computer background, which broadly sort of defines the concept, and I add life to it, brings conceptually some more character to it, yes, to be more sympathetic to the intent.
You create the mass, then you put overlays on it.
I'm sorry.
You create the masses, the volume, and then you overlays on them.
Sometimes these images done in Revit or in other programs are quite elaborate, and that helps to focus on the design rather than creating a drawing itself.
Yes,
you know?
But what do you mean by computer background? You mean, is it image photography and you trace over it, or what?
Yeah, it's, for example, we do the computer model in Revit of any given space, then we print a flat image, and either I work on Wacom or I do it freehand. It depends.
What is a computer model you're using, by the way?
I work myself on Wacom Mobile Studio Pro. I also use the tablets, the 24 inches tablets. But my office is working on Dells mostly. We are migrating towards the laptops, high sort of end.
We took from you a word for tonight that you will show us live show on your tablet, Mark.
Okay,
right?
So yes, we can.
Is it time that you can show us some lively how you really enjoy?
Well, yeah, I can show you how this happens on the Wacom.
Wonderful.
But what is the most important before I even do it, because it won't be as attractive within the very short period of time as these images, that we should encourage ourselves, both the professionals, students, and the faculties of the departments, not to settle too early on the electronics technique, and let improve and let encourage our especially the young profession into this connection between their brains and their hands. You know, this is something so elementary, but it also inspiring. I can see it on my kids, you know, how many wonderful drawings they produce, how many great designs they did before they got the tablets in their hands. You know, the moment when that happened, no matter how you try, how you put, okay, well, okay, you want a tablet, please have a pen and draw on the tablet. No. Then there's a different mindset. So at least I'm not saying everybody is the same, but maybe many of these young aspiring professionals could benefit from this road parallel to the more and ever sophisticated technology in terms of expressing their own design ideas.
So this is a sincere, experienced, professionally advice to our young student, to decision makers in architectural colleges, and for young professionals as well.
Right. So if you would be ever interested in to look at some of these images, in the end of the presentation, I provide a link to the websites where most of them are shown. But as a mean of exploratory technique for your forms, for your ambience, for the mood, for the you name it. You have to develop your own language, and it's not about producing beautiful drawings. It's about how well you can express your own thoughts. And there are some few techniques aspects which you can apply, but in fact it's a very individual thing, and has to be simple, straightforward, attractive in a way of communication. The word communication is the one which I would put absolutely from. Okay. So let me just go to the tablet.
Yes.
And,
because we already see that there are some good questions for you, Mark, after your demonstration, because we'll jump then to the questions and answers, and we'll take some of our audience questions as well.
Fantastic. So I will just be ready in a second. Let me just switch to the
just want to share with our audience the tool, the new version tool that you use, which with technology, from sketch pencil on paper to the new electronic drawing.
Right. So I have in front of me, I have a vacuum tablet, and I'll just open a very simple tool, which any of us can, and again, I'm not advertising for any software, just to be clear, but I use it because I found it quite useful. Somebody thought in Autodesk to come out with Sketchbook, simple thing. But to be very honest, we
don't see it yet, Mark.
You don't see it yet. Okay, so you need to put me on the,
activate it on our,
just 1 second.
Yes, now we see you. We need to see your screen as well.
Okay, do you see this white surface? Yeah.
Yes, now you are using tablet and PC in front of you, yes?
Yes. So, so basically, the tablet is a vacuum tablet. There are many others, but still I consider this quite useful. And it's as close to the real paper and real toolbox of Prismacolors or pencils or brushes, you can name it, but it's very simple to use. I encourage everybody to use it, and you can use it on your tablet, on your phone, on your laptop, on your computer, and you just do anything what you want on it. It's very easy to save. It's very easy to to work on it, and it's pretty much works like like a real paper, real tracing paper. The sense of drawing is unbelievably close to the reality. And I have to say that this equipment saved my life a lot. You know, like I went with my family for vacation, but at the same time I had to deal with
So
some.
still you're keeping yourself busy on vacation.
Yeah. So you know, so we can do pretty much anything on it. And not only the black and white format, but also with any other. No, so very friendly, very easy to use, very. So obviously this could work as a set of pencils, but also as a set of and from a very simple sketch all the way to the very refined drawings, almost Piranesian drawings, you can work on it, but the goal is really to use it to communicate. Some of this you can even do in a coffee bar, you know, working on your tablets if you happen.
You are already communicating. I'm waiting somebody to serve me coffee or tea now.
And you know, for those who also enjoy art, both involvement in art and you know, this could be a great tool to give us some relief from the architectural work.
What stylus you use, Marek?
This is a specialized pen which comes with Wacom. Do you see it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Wacom has the whole line of this thing. So again, I don't want to sound like an advertiser for this.
Can you just lift the vacuum a little bit, just we could see the size? The vacuum.
How big is your vacuum board?
Yes, the size. Yes. Let's just get familiar with the size in relation with your hand.
Just 1 second. We will try to do that.
Please. Very interesting sketches, by the way. Very architectural lines.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Just 1 second. Give us a chance to. No tutaj to jest. Jak to się podniesie, to widać.
Nie widać.
No ja.
Poczekaj, zoom muszę otworzyć.
No.
Nie widać, bo jest to prezentacja całej tle.
Okay, just 1 second. We will stop the background presentation.
Yes, good.
And then that will allow us to jest shared. Tutaj, przepraszam, tu. To naciśnij. Choose virtual background. None. Oh. Now I am sort of bare naked. This is my part of my studio. And you can see the tablet, how it looks, right?
Okay, yes.
Okay.
And this is a very old one. I have it since 2005. They are not cheap, unfortunately.
How much approximately?
I think you can get the newest one 32 inches within, let's say, 15 times 4, around 5,000 USD, something like that. So, and that's sort of a top of the line. But generally speaking, this is just a good tool. And since you were interested to see the tools, which are maybe a little bit in addition to the main subject of our our discussion. But it's also good to show that, you know, our work doesn't always have to be a hard work. It could be a fun. It could be, you know, for those who like to draw, and even some of our guests today, who I know are also very adept painters and artists, you know, could assess to this, that the profession of architect is not only the engineering and the logical and the pragmatic, but it also touches our other side of our brains, which should ideally match that. The most important thing is to enjoy, and we are living in such interesting times. So whatever we can contribute to the well-being of our societies in a real terms, so it doesn't stay only with us, with our thoughts, but also has a tangible.
Wonderful. And we are enjoying your session, Marek. It's not all about urban. It's not about architecture. It's about art, about message of how we can be passionate of what we do. We love it. We dedicate it. We give it the brain and the heart. So it can cherish and be passed to other generation, if I may say. And I see your message loud and clear of how much you love your work and how much you like to share this with other people. So surely we thank you so much for that.
Thank you very much. This is very nice.
Really, very nice presentation.
We would like to carry on, and even our audience, but we'll start probably to jump to question and answers, because we have some of our participants already have been sending question in the chat box, but also we may advise those dear audience who would like to go live on an audio question or addition to the presentation. They are welcome to raise their hands, and we'll take them here and there. Okay, Sami, do you have a question ready?
Yes, I have just to prepare until. I have from Dr. Ahmed Abu Al-Hija. He is a professor at Tiba University. He has a question. He said, in a hot, arid climate, do you consider albedo and environmental aspect in some of your projects? Show us if you have.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear exactly the first part of the question.
Yeah. In a hot, arid climate, okay?
Yes.
Do you consider albedo and environmental aspects in some of your projects? He said maybe Abdel Fattah asked you about climate consideration, but he said here an arid climate. Do you have any experience in arid climate projects that you show us how you control the place?
Like in Riyadh and
right.
Dubai.
Like Dubai, Riyadh, yes.
Absolutely. And, you know, very simply, you know, is the amount of light we are allowing to enter. We all would like to mimic the natural environments, but we have to face some realities. And there are some materials and some techniques which will allow us to mimic the natural environments without the compromise to the thermal conditions of the spaces inside. For example, if you are familiar with the Avenue Mall in Bahrain, the cover of that mall is made of this special material. It's like inflated pillows made of special gases inside, which act as which they provide very good thermal insulation, but allowing for the natural light to go through. And this product becomes very popular, and it's a German technology. It's ETFE. It's called ETFE, and it allows to cover the large spaces without making the roof, you know, hard surface or or definitely not the skylights, the glass skylights, which are the worst, obviously, from a thermal standpoint, even if they have some protection, some filters, some layers, some ceramic frits in order to protect against the light. So this is one of the examples. But by no means we should assume that there is one solution for everything. Like, for example, we want a plaza. We want this plaza to read as an outdoor plaza. Maybe in some places we would love to have a lot of natural light, like in the northern climate. In the climate of Riyadh, we would rather look for shade as the value. So we will limit the amount of natural light, still making this feel like a plaza, like a place, like a space for people to enjoy. Next aspect is the greenery. To what extent we can introduce greenery. Greenery is a precious thing in a climate like in Riyadh. How we can make it feel natural, almost like a conservatory, like a greenhouse place, without incurring some of the negative aspects of it. People react very well for the green aspects. This is very much needed in places like Riyadh. But in order to make it enjoyable, you have to really involve quite a lot of technology to create this type of pockets, both from a drainage standpoint, both from the sufficient lighting for it. So recreating the natural environments in Riyadh climate versus a northern European climate is obviously not the same game. And that's why we have our friends, colleagues from engineering, allied industries who we work very closely with in order to get the sufficient thermal and environmental conditions. There's also an issue of the cost. Yes, we can create a lot of very attractive spaces, but it all comes at the cost. So maybe we should start to think how to use the renewable energy sources in the commercial environments to offset or even eliminate these costs. And again, every year we have more and more technological advances. We just have to be open. We have to talk to the engineers who are on the foreground of these solutions. Then we have to talk to our economists to really assess the value, the cost versus value, in order to come out with what these environments and the quality of life for people could be.
And from this end, I have a question for you from one of our audience, Marek. Before we go to Mr. Yahya, who's waiting also long, raising his hand, let me take a question from the chat from a gentleman called Mr. Omar. He said, question to you, when working with developers, rentable area of the most important, how do you convince them to allow for open space, landscaped area that do not generate direct revenue? What is the value proposition you use? How do you, how do you quantify or demonstrate the value for them? That's a very good question. We care for value, we care for a happy place, we care, and we say all those reflect into successful place. But to many developers, they see only area as tangible. How do you kind of balance this? How you convince them? How do you communicate with them, and make sure they live with you this story to the end?
I think it's a very good time to ask that question, and I'll throw into this layer of complexity that in order to get the rents and the turnovers, you need the right tenants. And today, in many jurisdictions in the world, we are facing an issue: what tenants? They are disappearing. They are basically wiped out by the economical conditions. and to assume that we can live with the same tenant mix like we used to live for decades might be risky. That's why I'm at least aware of several developers who are looking elsewhere and said, look, we won't be able to satisfy our expected rents from the tenants who are going to be from a different level because their sales are declining or their operations are no longer as extensive as they used to be. So what do? And we try to push, could we diversify? Could we have not only the GLA from leasable commercial spaces, but rentable from residentials to rent or offices to rent, and the apartments to sell, or the housing components to sell? How we can move to the entertainment slash food organization of the given development, which then it requires the places to be seen and to see, which requires to be in attractive spaces rather than being in an enclosed sort of a non-attractive space, where the illusion, or not only the illusion, really the environment of what I showed you, some of this quote resort type of environments, embedded in the commercial things, you basically have to be more creative in the mix. You know, who can guarantee us that we can live with the same mix of, you know, and we can fit it in when some of these stores are migrating to, the trade is migrating to internet, especially in the hard climate conditions where it's much easier to click in a computer and get the courier with the goods.
I have for you another question in real estate, but after I taking Yahya Najjar, there is another developer or architect he want to ask in this. Let's take Yahya.
Yes, good evening, everyone. Thank you, Sami and Abdel Fattah, for this opportunity to meet again with my best friend, Mr. Marek. And actually, if the pandemic didn't actually, you know, COVID-19 was one of the reasons that Marek is not in Riyadh these days. So we are sorry that, you know, this thing happened. My question actually is about COVID-19. Now, you talked about placemaking and work, play, entertain places. Now, having gone through the pandemic and still going on actually, and the quarantine and so on, do you still have the same ideas of people mixing together in workplaces, in social areas, in livable spaces, coffee shops, restaurants, and so on? Or did you change your mind to come up with a new way of living? Because, you know, even if COVID-19 is over, I think the world might brace for other pandemics. My concern actually is that we as designers have to change the way people live. So did you think of something during this 3 months of hardship that could actually solve the issue of, you know, society for future?
Long question, but we need faster answers since we have many people are very interested also to jump in. Marek, go ahead.
Well, I think, this is thank you for this very good question. And obviously, I don't have the crystal ball how this all evolved. I presume that we will finally be able to overcome the pandemic consequences, but some things will stay for sure. We know already that people are rediscovering the working from homes or from the places which are not getting them together in an office, sort of a crowded environments, that some sort of a hybrid solutions will be very much in place. In terms of the using the public spaces, public things, I think that eventually, as we would be more sort of open to interact, because the today's consequences will no longer be in place, we may have to still consider the fact that we are a social species. Even if you are, a lot of our life is in a virtual world, which will have its own impact, ever profound, even more profound than we can imagine. We still will need the local communities. We still need the local neighborhoods. We still need local aspects. We may not venture all the time to 100 miles to do something, experience something. We may start to expect this locally. So for that, I believe we as designers and architects and creative people, or working in a sync with the other professions, should really look for the answers. This may come into the other aspect, which is even more profound, which is the climate consequences. And I think this is almost a separate subject, which we might one day discuss together. What our cities, the new cities, should look like. What, not really look, but to be. What are they going to be in order to shelter us, shield us against the consequences of climate?
Mark, I have another question in a quick way, because we have 5 questions after this. From this question is from Abdul Muhsin Al-Qamdi, Mr. Abdul Muhsin Al-Qamdi. His question is, what is the key language between the real estate developer and the architect, and what comes first, the financial aspect or the design aspect? Who comes first, the chicken or the egg?
Well, you know, I would take a very simple approach to it. Either we are living in a real world, or we are hobbyists. If you want to be hobbyist, or if you want to be theory-oriented creative people, that's a one arena. If you want to accomplish things, who is going to make it happen? Is the very simply speaking, is the person who is going to pay for it. So all our efforts should, on our creativity and our best ideas, should be to convince and provide the proofs, and provide the best, closest to proofs, solutions which will convince the financial sector to embark on our idea. There is no other way. Unless we have philanthropist developers, sometimes we have, who could be willing to take the cost, which has proportions of the profit and proportions of the efficiency, and the cost for doing this embedded in.
Wonderful. Marek, I have 2 dear guests here with us, raising hand, and I will take them in a row. I'll start with Dr. Sukaina Al-Musa, Dean of College of Architecture at Al Asala University. She works with many young boys and girls, definitely female, but also she is involved in the same school that teaches both sex. So we would like to hear her question and also your message to her student. Dr. Sukaina, please join us.
Thank you very much, Architect Abdel Fattah, Architect Sami, for arranging this very interesting talk. You touched on so many inspiring points, and it was really interesting to hear it from a practice point of view and from an experience point of view, rather than just a theoretical point of view. Obviously, I'm interested in the design process and the new approaches in the design process where we can learn new things and teach to our future architects and designers. I am interested in the idea of chance and indeterminacy in the design process. I heard you mentioned the uncertainty, the importance of acknowledging uncertainty in the design process, especially in these days where we are encountering new surprising situations where we found out new things about our use of space, our relationships with our places. So how much would you consider chance or accidental happenings or accidental ideas in your design process? Do you consider it as an encounter that you encounter it with full awareness, or does it happen, in the background of the design process while we don't know or we don't realize? This is a bigger question within a wider research context that I'm conducting, but I was interested to know whether you have experienced it from your experience, since you mentioned the importance of being uncertain, because it allows us to be flexible and to be open to new solutions.
Good question, Dr. Sukaina. Mark.
Well, thank you very much for a very interesting question. And in fact, you were so kind to almost answer this question. I think the element of spontaneous thinking, of taking 2 steps forward, 1 step back, or completely scrap and do something different, is very dear to the way how I work. Sometimes it drives my colleagues uncomfortable because it throws a stick in a well-oiled wheel of process. I remember my early years of both the education and then work, where the process was a paramount thing, where it was the sequence, the logic, the programming, all these things. And it's all very much right. But does it work for everybody? I'm not sure. This is how I believe we also are different than machines, that we sometimes take the clues for the solutions or for the things what we are engaged with, not necessarily from a hyper-rational process. Machines are much better in it. Give this task to the machine, it will do it much better than you. But machine, at least today, will not be as inclined to undertake the fuzzy logic process, which we as humans are very much involved with in our lives. So I'm not afraid to admit that for me the chance, the accident, the uncertainty is a big part of my process.
Very good. Okay. We have with us Ihab Al-Amri. He's a landscape and urban designer, a talented Saudi practitioner, and he's been with you, and I'm sure probably has a very interesting question for you. Ihab, please join the floor.
Thank you. Do you hear me?
Yes, we do.
I hear very well.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Marek, and thank you, Fatah and Sami, for this presentation.
Thank you.
My question is related to the future of urban project that we are expecting in the coming few years. Now, the retail business, as we know, is expected and is to diminish more and more during the coming years due to the increase in online sales. And now with COVID-19, that the situation is really accelerating more and more. So in the United States, they were expecting on 2030, 30% of the shopping malls will close. But now they are saying it is really much earlier it will close, but they are expecting on 2021, 30% of the United States shopping malls will close soon. So my question is really, since the retail business is going down, another type of demand is going to raise. For example, most of those retailers who are transferring to online sales, they need warehouses now. So they don't really look for expensive retail stores in expensive malls. What they need is really just a warehouse, and also to be a warehouse, and just that depends on online sales. So at the same time, they need several locations within large cities to be closer to their customers as well. So we are expecting, for example, a demand on warehouses for retailers as well as for restaurants, because also restaurants are now depending on online sales a lot. So in the coming really near future for large cities, we are expecting a lot of demand of those warehouses. So what are the type of urban projects that will really come in the near future to cope up with those new demands in the coming future?
I think this supports our views that we have to diversify. And there's no point to put the old crown on our heads because it doesn't fit anymore. And but humans will still have needs. They will still have different needs. That's why what was previously the offer of goods, maybe there's an offer of services. Maybe there is an offer of goods in a combination with services. Maybe the local aspects, maybe the production of the goods as locally as possible, maybe the slow food, slow life concepts, maybe the concepts of fabrication, 3D fabrication, the 3D printing of goods could get more and more advanced, so we don't have to ship things from the other side of the world and have it as locally as possible. I think the technology will help us if we use it correctly. I think the shape of the environments, the shape of our urban theater might change. And I have a small dream that we should start to explore the horizontal developments of the cities, layered, rather than aim for the vertical, small footprints, monofunction towers and the buildings.
So the land scrapers that we discussed earlier.
Yes,
We have here a question because we have 10 minutes to finish. If you wrap up with Mr. Ihab, I have here 2 hands ready. Marek, yes, you complete.
So basically, I think this is the time to really start quite seriously consider reinventing the typology of our cities. Maybe when we say cities, blending the cities with the buildings. Who says that we have to have a city and the building? Maybe they are the same. Maybe they maybe they come to the almost a fusion of the various functions of energy, of waste management, of food production, of education, of transportation in a much more smaller integrated format. I think this is a truly fascinating subject, almost for a separate focused discussion.
Okay, I'll take Mr. Ihsan Al-Abbad, and I will let him wait until you answer this question from Fatima. She said, do you carry this tablet with you on a vacation, or do you have many mini size of it?
Very good question. In fact, very much on time, because I just came back from the place where I ship some of my family to, and I was considering, I have a special suitcase which comes with this tablet, but I didn't dare to take it with me because my wife would just let me stay with that suitcase outside the vacation place.
How about if you go to a coffee shop, for example, you take it with you?
No, they're way too big.
Okay.
But smaller model, which is called Cintiq Mobile Studio Pro, which is 16 inches screen, which is fantastic for travel, for working.
As well?
Anything on it.
Yeah. Let's take Mr. حسان العباد. تفضل مهندس حسان، وبعدين بناخذ المهندس عمر.
مهندس حسان معانا. أنا ميوت.
اوكي.
السلام عليكم.
عليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Sami. Thank you, Abdel Fattah. I have a question away from the urban planning or urban architecture, but it is in the subject. You have done a very good show for us, a demonstration for using the tablet, and I like to ask one question about this one. I have noticed in my office, actually I have my office, and I noticed that most of the young architects, they don't have good talent in freehand. Mostly they are working directly on the AutoCAD or whatever programs they are using. So my question to Mark, do you feel that also in your architects and away from Saudi Arabia? Is it the same or it is different? And the other question, do you think that the tablet, I mean, the way you have demonstrated for us is good enough for them to keep their talent to draw by their hands? Because I have tried this way, actually by my hand in the tablet. It looks good. I think it's not the same as freehand by, for example, sketching of pencil colors or others, like what we do as all the architects. But still, it is better than direct work on the AutoCAD.
A clear question, good question, Mark. I think you are the best to answer such question.
Yes. Well, I think it really doesn't matter, is it a tablet or is it a sketchbook like this one, you know, where you can do exactly the same using the pencil on paper. The carrier doesn't matter. It's just a subtle encouragement of architects to really express their ideas, you know, in any way they feel comfortable with. That's all what it's needed. Here I have my colleagues, my friends, my collaborators are adept in drawings. Some of them are fantastic on the computers, in 3D modeling. I think it's all about encouraging, exploring their own creativity. What is the mean doesn't really matter. They may take scissors and cut the things out of paper, do a simple models. They may sketch, they may paint, they may express themselves in many different ways. I think it's a balance between being an engineer and an artist. For some people is closer to one side, from the others is closer to this one. The fact is that computers are going to be even more and more advanced, more friendly, more easier, more closer to our own ability to express ourselves.
Okay, Marek, I have two questions and we have 4 minutes. One of them, how do you make a business development in Europe? How you get a project? And the other question from Mr. Omar, he is raising his hand. Okay, but answer business development first, then we'll take Mr. Omar. This is the last one.
Well, if you are asking me about today, this is a very difficult time for the business development, because the words of our clients, and we are in fact in a service industry, is very, very unstable. We don't really know what is going to be even a midterm prognosis. So we are trying to help our clients with studies, with feasibility studies, with designs wherever they occur, and hoping that together, or we could be a help for them to identify those opportunities for them, where we can then support them. It's not an easy time. I would be lying to say that this is a sort of a easy time. But it's also time to rethink the way how we work, the way how we, what's our procurement of work look like, who do we talk to, where do we talk to, how do we team up, who do we team up. I think this is the time where a lot of old cliches could be re-evaluated.
Good. Mr. Omar, are you ready for the question?
Yes, I was trying to get myself unmuted. Thank you, Architect Abdel Fattah and Sami and Marek. My question is a little bit of a history. I know CRSS that designed KFEPM back in the day, that was later on acquired by HOK. And yes, they had some fantastic design philosophies, and I read the book, The Problem Seeking, and that was later reissued by HOK. Yes. Are these design philosophies still used and applied, and do you find them relative today?
Well, for me, the CRSS and this programming knowledge, which was by far unique in the United States at that time, indeed was the whole company was acquired by HOK, and we inherited naturally that knowledge. We worked with the best specialists of that time. I've learned a lot. And the process of programming, which was very characteristic to that company, became a standard for HOK and for many projects in the world. I would say that it's not dead for sure. This probably evolved. It evolved with much stronger input of the technological advances. But I would say this is almost like an alphabet or vocabulary for the planner, for the architect.
By the way, I should mention I work for Jacobs that acquired the other half, the engineering half.
Okay.
And I know Tim and some of the great people.
Yeah, these guys from Houston were absolutely fantastic, and some of them moved to other HOK offices, to Dallas, to the whole programming group. I worked very closely on the corporate projects.
Marek, before we conclude, we came to the end of our session. We did not want it to finish. It was so much enjoyable. But before I conclude, I would like to ask you any last statement you would like to mention.
Well, I think I feel again blessed and honored by this discussion, by this opportunity, by the form of the organization. I strongly suggest to do as much as possible, talk to various people from different backgrounds, different, even allied professions. This is a great opportunity to take this unusual time to know each other better, to know other people's thoughts, other doubts, other great ideas which may come out. And I think this is the time for it. And there's, and I really would like to thank you and all the gentlemen who organized this session. For me, this was profoundly interesting and profoundly important. And I really thank you for that.
And we would like here also to thank you, a big thank you to you, Mark. You've been a wonderful guest on Atelier Arc in association with Saudi Amran platform. We try to enrich our time and area, and also our young fellows with all what helps them in making better architecture, better urban places, better life, helping really activate and make our places happy. Tonight we enjoyed all those aspects that you shared with us in making really a good places for people, how to do it, what are tools, what are the process, how we could all, professional collaborate and do that. We really thank you for your thought. We enjoyed having to see your communication graphical skills. We discussed before, and I love the way we had common in this. I always say ideas come in the tip of your pencil, and you live them and you grow them, and the way we feel about architecture and how much you have to put a lot of really time and love to it. Share the brain and the heart on what you do. Be passionate, and you would love it. It will reflect on your product or reflect back. Thanks to you. We learned a lot from your session today. So let me, in this conclusion, first thank our dear valued architect Marek Tryzybwicz from Poland. You were an honored guest with us tonight. We enjoyed it. On behalf of Atelier Arc and Saudi Amran, myself and my colleague architect Sami Haddad and all the team, Ali, Ahmed Sami and all the technical team. We thank your team too, back there in your office who helped us, your son as well. We thank our beautiful, lovely, loyal audience for their attendance, for following what we try to bring forward, and for them actively enriching this session by their questions and participation. So thank you all, and Atelier Arc promise you with more to come. And next Monday we have another guest speaker, and with a new subject, with a new knowledge sharing. So look forward to our account, social media, to get to know more, and we hope to see you soon, and we wish you a very beautiful good night. From me, Abdul Fattah.
Thank you, Mark, for your presentations, your interactive sketching board, a lot of added value we heard tonight from you. Appreciated very much. Thank you for the audience too.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure and honor indeed.